Hey guys, hope you guys are having a great day today. Today is episode 7. I'm here with a friend of mine. I've known this guest for several years now. She's an awesome lady. She serves in her church. I've known her through her church and also through what we're going to be talking about today. And today's guest is Willow Sanders. Willow, thank you for doing this podcast episode with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. Tell my audience a little bit about who you are, a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Yeah, well, as Danny said, I have been in ministry here in Port St. Lucie for about 20 years. I'm originally from New York, and I transplanted here in 2001, and I am a mom of 2 young men. I have a 25-year-old son and a 21-year-old son. Boys are awesome and challenging. And I serve at my church in various different roles, but specifically mostly in women's ministry, which I just love.
That's awesome. And so you're working with CareNet, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so it's CareNet Pregnancy Center of Treasure Coast, correct? Yes. And so tell us a little bit about CareNet. How was it founded? What does CareNet do, and all that kind of great stuff?
Awesome, yeah. Well, it's, to me, such an interesting story. I'll get into a little bit more of what brought me here in a little bit, but I had never heard of CareNet before. And as I started to hear the story of CareNet, I just thought, wow, what a beautiful coming together of things. And we know that in the 70s, early 70s, we started to have a lot of changes going on in our country. Roe versus Wade was passed, and our nation was kind of being split on cultural values in a way it hadn't before. And one day, Billy Graham received a letter from someone, a very terse letter, I guess, kind of challenging him to saying, hey, if you guys are against this, what are you doing about it?
Yeah.
And that kind of prompted a conversation that went on with some very influential people, the former U.S. Surgeon General, C. Everett Koop, very well-known scholar, Francis Schaeffer. And those conversations turned into deciding that they did need to do something. They actually did need to make a place where people could feel safe. Men and women who were struggling with a crisis pregnancy could come and get practical resources. And that's really kind of how they all got together. It was actually at that time called the Christian Action League. Yeah. Didn't have a fancy name. It was just kind of, that's what we're doing. We're Christians and we're going to take some action. And league sounds like superheroes, so I don't know. But yeah, that's kind of how it got started.
Awesome. And what does CareNet actually do?
Yeah. So there's CareNet, which I kind of just described, is a national organization. There's over 1,200 CareNets throughout the country, and in a few other countries. And so the national organization kind of is the oversight for all of the different franchises. CareNet on the local level is an organization that aims to provide practical resources for people that are facing crisis pregnancies. Our goal is to provide the community with life-affirming support, to support our young people in making healthy and wise decisions, and then to also be a support system for those people who are post-abortive, so that we can provide them recovery resources and referrals.
Awesome. See, I didn't even know that you guys do all of that kind of stuff.
And so much more, really. Much more.
Yes. So I knew that you guys helped out with stuff with basically like before the child is born and all that kind of stuff. I didn't know that you guys did post-abortive stuff as well. And so that's awesome that you guys provide that. So how did you get involved in CareNet?
Yeah. So it was, like I said, kind of a surprise to me. It wasn't, I had never heard of them. It wasn't something natural outflow of just my life, led me here. It was because of a story in my life, though. I had just felt this kind of uneasiness where I was working. I was working a completely secular job. And through somebody at my church, they had just told me about this organization that was hiring, and kind of just connected me. And to me, it was just maybe another place to work that was
Yeah.
Christian. That would be really cool. What I found out, though, was what this organization was when I came. And when I came and found out exactly what CareNet was, it was kind of one of those moments where you just are stopped by the sovereignty of God. Like, you're just floored. Because in 1994, I myself had a crisis pregnancy. And so that turned into, one child and then another child. And then me just falsely believing a lot of stuff about God's plans for me. And so as I started to kind of find more about in the interview process, I was just like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life.
Exactly.
At least this season of it. And so we interviewed and I was hired. And it's just such an amazing story of, God doesn't waste anything. And,
Exactly.
and how God brings us to things that we have life experience with.
That's awesome. So how long have you been with CareNet?
Yeah, so that season has actually turned into 16 years.
That's awesome.
I'm celebrating, I think this November is my 16th year. I don't know besides high school and parenting that I've been anywhere 16 years consistently. And it's just such
Most
a joy to
people
work here.
don't. That's
No.
rare that people stay longer than 4 or 5 years with a job.
Such a turnover.
So.
When I started with CareNet, we were only 3 people and we had 1 center. 16 years later, we're a staff of 14.
Awesome.
And we're about to open our 3rd center. And so God is moving in this area. He's definitely calling us to be active, in this. That is what we're supposed to do, is minister, to the least of these, the widows and the orphans. And I think the other beautiful thing about the longevity is I've seen the growth of the ministry. When I did start, we did have a post-abortive part of the ministry. So that was active. We really didn't have a healthy student department. Which is the portion that I serve. I'm the Director of Student Services, and so our job is to minister to the young people, really from elementary, but that's more kind of encouraging conversations at home, and then definitely from the middle school all the way through college. And then we definitely didn't have a men's side of the ministry. We have a men's director now.
That's awesome.
And
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, and the pro-life movement of old kind of was like, let's deal with the immediate need. And that was the immediate need on the attack on the mom and the baby. And so we weren't equipped yet to really kind of deal with the dads. And that kind of has progressed across the country and definitely in our center. And it's just such a beautiful part of the story.
More recent development?
He's been on staff, I want to say 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
I will tell you, though, the month that we hired him, the first 6 months, we saw a 42% increase in the guys that we saw coming, staying, wanting to speak with someone. They're part of the pregnancy too.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they need to be heard.
Exactly.
And we've had so many testimonies of decisions turn around because of the support of the
That's
father.
awesome. That's awesome that you guys are doing that and changing these people's lives. And that's what ministry, because this is really ministry work when you really think about it.
Absolutely.
And so this is, and I know CareNet is kind of funded by churches and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of an extension of that. And you guys are just kind of the specialized people for that. And so that's awesome that you guys are ministering to all kinds of people in the community. And it's like you said, the guys are part of the pregnancy too.
Yeah.
And especially if it's an unplanned pregnancy, especially if it's the first one. I know, I've got 2 kids. I know I didn't have a clue what I was getting myself into with my first child.
Yeah.
And so,
and the beautiful thing is that we actually also have a part of our program that didn't exist when I first started here. And so more than just taking them in, giving them a test, we are equipping them. And so we have this whole program that is called Bright Course, and it is literally, they make up their own course. Like, what do they want to learn about? What do they want to know? Maybe they're happy about this pregnancy, but they had a dysfunctional home and they don't know how to parent, or they never believed they could be a good parent or a good dad or a good mom. It's not always just because moms have babies that they think they're ready to go.
Exactly.
Everybody needs encouragement. And so we have volunteers that we call mommy mentors. Really just an older person that has some wisdom that walks weekly with them through these lessons and talks to them about what they're learning and what maybe they're questioning and don't understand. And it's just been such an amazing thing to see. It's more than just one-dimensional.
Yeah.
The crisis pregnancy center movement across the country is so multifaceted.
That's awesome.
And what you just mentioned is such a huge part of what we do. The church is essential. We're not called as pregnancy centers to carry these clients that we see for years. Sometimes their time with us is very short, and our heart is to make sure we connect them to the local church, because that's where they're going to grow, that's where they're going to thrive, that's where they're going to develop roots, and then they're going to become a healthy family, whatever that looks like. Some of them stay single, some of them get married, but our heart is to connect them
to the local church.
Absolutely.
And that's vital, because you're basically pointing them to people who can continue to equip them.
Yeah.
And grow and help grow them spiritually. And you guys are doing a great job at planting seeds.
We hope
and
so.
Well, I mean, you guys are on the front lines. Yeah. You guys are on the front lines of the gospel, and you're planting the seeds. You're pointing them in a direction, and hopefully, it's kind of like what the Apostle Paul says, that somebody plants and then somebody else waters, and somebody else may get to reap the harvest, and you have no idea the impact that you might be making. That seed that you plant today may be there for a long time, and then somehow years later sprouts up into something.
Oh my gosh. And we have so many of those stories where people have come back, and sometimes we don't even recognize it. I think we all know sometimes crisis physically changes us.
Yes.
And so somebody that comes in very downcast, very troubled, very just chaotic, their life is just chaotic, and they come in back together and their life in order and things going in a more positive way. And so we haven't even recognized them sometimes, and they've brought their child back to meet us again, or show us, or just encourage our hearts, just exactly like what you said, to keep us going, because it's tough work. It is tough work.
It's tough
and I
work.
think the other thing is that partnership between us and the church is also to challenge the church, because we always have to be aware of that. A lot of people aren't going to come to the doors of our church. We have to go out and find them, and partnering in your local communities with the local church, in the local pregnancy center and the church, is such a huge way to continue the gospel moving forward and moving out into the world.
Exactly. Do you mind sharing just an example? I mean, I know you want to keep things anonymous.
Of course.
Can you don't have to mention names or anything, but can you share an example of something that maybe in your mind I know this is kind of off the cuff, but something that a situation that may have come to mind, exactly like what you're talking about.
Yeah, I will actually. Yeah, we have it's just such a good relationship between the different parts of the ministry that kind of flow here together. And so many stories in my head right now. Which one do I pick? Because 4 of them are going off. We had a client come, and she was very perplexed. One of the other things that we do is not just pregnancy, but it's also STD testing. And so she had come in because of a concern of a pregnancy scare. In the midst of that, we also encouraged her to possibly maybe get STD tested, just from some stuff she told us in her story. And through that counseling, she really started to contemplate some of her behaviors. But you could tell there wasn't a complete turnaround yet.
Yeah.
And she was actually a believer. I know that may shock some of your viewers possibly, but we see quite a few people that have a Christian faith or Christian worldview. And so through one of our trained counselors, just spending some time with her, investing in her, we were able to get her into a conversation of possibly thinking about changing her behavior. Not everything we deal with here at the pregnancy center is a pregnancy. Sometimes it's an opportunity for changed behavior. And that was her story. Through the counselor, we started meeting with her over here on the sexual integrity side of the program. And it was a rough go. It's very hard to undo those ties that we get ourselves into when we sin. And so there was some stuff that she had to start believing and some stuff she had to stop believing. And we were able to continue to meet with her weekly and continue to deposit some truths from the Bible and from healthy relationship education and stuff like that into her heart. And she really completely one day, and it was work, and then one day it clicked. And she just said, I'm just done. And she cut off all the ties that she had been holding on that were giving her value and worth. And and I don't fully believe myself maybe that there wasn't a hope that maybe a pregnancy would result from this, to give her meaning or someone to love her. But through her change behavior, she was able to stop and make some healthy choices going forward. And very shortly after that, she was able to meet a man of strong character, a man that was just so worthy of her time, of this woman who had done the hard stuff, who had made the changes. She was able to connect back with her church in a way that wasn't what she described as every week so stressful, because she was living one life and then showing up for church, exuding another.
Yeah.
And so they were able to get married. They have 2 kids now.
That's awesome.
Such a healthy thing that, isn't maybe your typical crisis pregnancy story, but it also just shows you that there's such a variety of people that God brings here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's as you're telling the story, I'm sitting here thinking that is an awesome story of grace and redemption and forgiveness. And that is exactly what Christ has called us as Christians to do.
Yeah.
And, even Christians, we all fall into sin. We all fall into sin, and we all have that sinful nature within us, and we need to be showing each other grace and forgiveness and pointing each other back in the direction that we need to go in. A lot of times when people fall in church, they think, oh man, I'm struggling with this. I can't go any further, or they're so ashamed. They think people are going to bash them, and unfortunately, sometimes it happens.
Absolutely, you
sometimes
bring up
it happens.
Such a good point right there. That is why it is so essential that the local church, in whatever area that you are, that you're watching and listening to this, it is so essential that the local church is connected with their local pregnancy center, because if it's visible in your church, then they possibly have another area that they may be able to go to, that their church is already saying that they trust that we have a relationship with these people. And I think me as a mom, both of my boys are young adults. In raising them, I've always made sure, hey, listen, we have a very open relationship, but if there's something you can't talk to me about, here's some people in your life that are safe people. That's kind of what the church is saying when you connect with a local crisis pregnancy center. It's saying, hey, these are safe people. Like, you can go to them. And it ups the chances that there won't be such wounded people in our pews.
Exactly.
There'll be healed people.
Exactly.
Not perfect, but healed, reconciled, restored.
Exactly. And sometimes there's just that stigma of, man, people are going to hate me, people are going to think this of me, and it's so awesome that you guys are providing an avenue where people can go to, and they don't have to feel like they're going to be judged for what they've done.
Yeah.
And so that there is that grace, there is that forgiveness, because essentially what you want to do eventually is turn them to Christ.
Absolutely.
Point them in that direction.
Yeah.
And so, and share that witness, because if all we do is judge people, then all people are going to think about us as Christians is that we're judgmental.
Yeah.
And so that's something that as Christians...
That's already there. We have to fight with that every day.
Exactly. And so they already think that in their minds.
Absolutely,
and that's something that we have to overcome.
Yeah.
And so you've already said that you are kind of in the student area of CareNet. Can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on that? And also describe what kind of impact this has made on your life, because I didn't realize you'd been with CareNet for 16 years now.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure that has made a huge impact in your life, especially raising 2 boys. And so if you can kind of share that a little bit.
So I'll kind of go into the impact first, I guess.
Okay, go for it.
To me, kind of will roll into the other stuff. But, like I said, I was so broken. I had told myself, and I was raised in the church. When I had my crisis pregnancy, I was in the church. I was one of the people that you were talking about a minute ago. My story was different. My church embraced me, and I was able to choose life and have a very healthy beginning to our new story. But one of the things that I didn't kind of let go of was that I made this huge mistake, and God was, never going to use me in ministry. He would always take care of me. I knew that about my God. But there's some consequences to sin, and they don't really tell you what they are in Scripture, so I just made up my own. And I thought one of those would be, you're not going to get to work in ministry. You mess that up. And so when I came to CareNet, and that was my story, and then I started to begin to see what CareNet did, and so maybe not for someone like me that had that support from church, but now getting to see what other people's stories were. Exactly. That impacted me so much because I knew how well loved I was, and I wanted us to be that for other people. And we were that. That was already the foundation before I got here. We were that to other people. And so being able to grow in the ministry and see the impact of connecting the community with the church, with other organizations, with the heart of the Father, you know, to have his children just reconciled, was so huge to me. It has made a life-changing impact. I know I always think of, gosh, what could be greater than this, you know? Yeah. Never ask yourself that question, because the Lord will say, okay, let's find out. But CareNet has just been so powerful in my life to shape me. I think one of the things that I share, I'm not shy about sharing it, so if everybody's like, whoa, you know, I got divorced, and since that, I have been living a life of celibacy, abstinence, call it whatever you want, whatever you're comfortable with. And one of the amazing things that has meant for me is that I have a position, you know, of teaching sexual integrity to others. Yeah. That meant that had to be at the forefront for me of how I raised my kids, of how I lived my life, of how I carried myself. And so for me, that was a preservation for my life. It wasn't just like a job description. It helped me keep myself hemmed in, so that I made sure I was also walking with integrity, that I was also walking with honor before the Lord and before those students that God placed before me. Exactly. And so that kind of just leads me to being able to be in the classroom and be so real and so honest and so raw, which our kids so need. I don't know about you. I'm gonna say there's a good decade possibly between us. But I was definitely raised in the kind of say no, True Love Waits hadn't come yet, you know, and so
I was during the True Love Waits.
Right, okay. So yeah, and it's about a decade difference, and so both had their problems. But to be in this new era of you know, millennials, and you know, everything being so different, everything being so instant, everything being so accessible. And me coming into it in the newness at the same time was kind of like a blessing, because we all got to grow together. We all got to figure it out together. And so it's just been so encouraging to be able to empower students to think for themselves. I know that sounds like a very cultural thing, but culture is actually not letting them think for themselves. They're actually telling them what to think with all of the stuff that's on TV, with all of the trends, with all of just the saturation. And we actually challenge students, hey, think for yourself. Think about what's healthy and then the outcome of that. Think about what's unhealthy and then the outcome of that. And so it really was this way to empower students that when they're given the healthiest and wisest information, they're actually capable of making the healthiest and wisest decisions. Exactly. And with an encouragement and support system behind them. So we also actually encourage parents, because we also don't just deal with students, because we know we're sending those students home somewhere. And we want to also educate the parents. So it's just such a multifaceted ministry that we get to bring to the students.
It's funny that you mentioned True Love Waits, because in recent years they've actually redone True Love Waits.
Yes.
And it's coming back. But when I was involved in True Love Waits, it was kind of the same thing. It was, just say no, you know, and it was all about abstinence before marriage. And they realized that, well, in my generation, the millennial generation that went through that, that became like an idol. And it was all about how close to that line can you get. And now the focus of True Love Waits is now, instead of on abstinence, it's now on holiness. So they're teaching you the why behind the what. They're teaching you to think about all the factors of why you should stay away from those kind of things. And so that, I think that's important. It's important because you're changing the mindset. Like what you guys are doing is you're changing their mindset. A lot of times people, especially in church, people tend to have a very legalistic mindset. It's they think the Bible is about do's and don'ts. But it's really about freedom. And to be able to see, all right, so if that line is sin, I shouldn't see how close I could get to it without sinning. I should be far away from it.
Right.
And how can I keep myself away from that?
Yeah.
And so you have to think about the why behind the what.
And I think what's happened for years and years and years is that we have heard a lie long enough repeated, and we've assimilated it as truth, and so we live in a very postmodernistic culture.
Yes.
And, it just keeps getting more and more that way, that we can make up all these truths for ourselves. And while that's true, you can make all the choices you want. We still live in America. We're still pretty free compared to other countries. You don't get to choose the consequences of those choices. And so that's kind of what, following off what you were saying is like, yeah, you can choose to get as close to you as you want to that line, but you don't get to choose the outcome of you making that choice to get as close as you want to that line. There's stuff that comes with that.
Exactly.
And the preservation is in assessing the cost before. Not getting close and now trying to assess the cost because you got too close.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think a lot of the purity movement has changed a lot in the past 5 to 10 years. And I see a lot, for us, I see a lot more concern for kind of the 1 Timothy 4:12 of it, that there's these 5 aspects. It's not just the physical, but it's what we do with our body, it's what we do with our speech, it's how we live our life, it's all these aspects, and that's holiness. It's being set apart. It's not just finding out what I shouldn't be doing, finding out what I should be doing.
Exactly.
That's a key.
Exactly. And when you find out what you should be doing, it frees you from the stuff that you shouldn't be doing.
Absolutely.
And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is the Christian life is more about freedom than about a list of don't do this.
Yeah.
And so when you focus on the don'ts, you live your life under legalism instead of living your life in freedom and figuring out that you can be satisfied in Christ and not in all these other things that will seem like they satisfy you for a season, and then leave you more empty than when you started.
We are 2,000 plus years, into this life. And nothing has changed since the garden. Like the same thing. So much freedom there for them. But all they could look at is what they couldn't have.
And what they couldn't.
And I guess we're hard students.
Yes, we are.
We're hard educational
Yes, we are.
geniuses.
And unfortunately, we don't learn from the mistakes of others.
No.
Unfortunately. So, can you share a little bit more? I know you talked a little bit briefly about what CareNet does, but why is CareNet so vital, especially in this area? Like what makes CareNet so vital in this area?
Well, definitely, the most practical reason is because Planned Parenthood exists. Anywhere there's a Planned Parenthood, you're going to want a pregnancy center, because we need to be able to fight the lies that are being purported out there, that life is not precious, that life does not begin at conception, that life is disposable. So just, off the cuff, that would be one of the first reasons. Life is sacred. And how are they going to know unless they're told? They need some place to tell them. And a pregnancy center is the perfect place to tell them that not only does their baby have worth, but they have worth.
Exactly.
And so a crisis pregnancy center in a community, I kind of got this as I started to become comfortable with the movement and how we operated and what we brought to the table to our community. The number one reason that people choose abortion is because of lack of practical resources. When you're in a crisis situation, you know what the most practical resource you need? Someone to listen to you. And CareNet provides that. They're a place for kind of like a third party, uncommitted to that situation, besides the heart connection that we feel. What they choose to do with their pregnancy isn't really to affect our household or anything immediate, but the time that we can give to that client by listening to them and helping them kind of sort out what's going on in their world is priceless and can change everything in their situation. And so just that first practical resource of being a listening ear and helping them sort through and unpack some of the stuff. Being that kind of buffer also between families, because some of our clients are young. I can definitely think of situations where we've had a client come in and she's like, my parents are going to kill me. And they're not going to kill you. They're like, no, they're really going to kill me. And we're like, that's concerning. But then being able to talk to the parent, they're just devastated. Their dreams for their child changed. but through the ability to be able to counsel and sit and just talk with no agenda, like really more than them understanding that you do have choice. There's more than just one choice of ending this child's life. We've seen beautiful outcomes.
That's awesome.
The other thing is that kids are expensive. And some people choose abortion or placing for adoption because the weight of that is just too much. Mm-hmm. Maybe they're in school, maybe they're in college, maybe they've just started their life and it's just an undue burden. And so we have practical resources of providing them with everything from maternity clothes, really up through multiple ages. And we mm-hmm. also have resources out in the community that we can then pass them off to when we stop having that need. Diapers, formula, wipes, like stuff that costs.
Yes. Trust me, I know. I still have one in diapers that we're about to potty train. Diapers Absolutely. Are definitely expensive.
So expensive. And formula is like almost $20 a can. Mm-hmm. And so just those kind of practical resources. Yeah. We have donors that just love the mission and the heart of what we do. And will donate anything from strollers to cribs to car seats to mm-hmm. bath stuff. I mean, literally anything. When we have somebody ask us what we need for the ministry, we really tell them, what would someone buy you for a baby shower? Because very frequently our clients don't have that in their lives. And so we want to treat them mm-hmm. just like anybody else who's excited about welcoming a life. Mm-hmm. And so all those practical resources really try to knock that out for them.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like I said before, is that we do have that Bright course, which mm-hmm. helps them be educated. Everybody is not ready to be a parent, and the fact that maybe they had a horrible childhood or a horrible upbringing, and maybe it wasn't even a broken home, it could have been a two-parent household, frightens the daylights out of them. But we're able to maybe come in and show them, hey, this is possible.
Yeah.
Let us just encourage you for a little bit to show you that stuff might not be as bad as you think it is right now.
Yeah.
I would say for the majority of our clients, we've never had a client come back and tell us that they're sorry that we encouraged them to mm-hmm. think differently about their pregnancy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We have had many come back and really thank us for the life that they're holding in their arms.
That's awesome because, you don't realize how precious a life is until that moment, at least for me as a dad.
Yeah.
When that baby is now, it's different for a mother. Mm. For a dad, it's a little bit different because a mother falls in love with their child while their child is still within them. But a dad, it's different. Mm-hmm. And this was with both of my children. It was a different experience because, mm-hmm. I'm feeling my, Tara's stomach, and I'm feeling the little hands and the feet and all that kind of stuff. But you don't really feel what it's like to have the baby there. And the moment you see your child come out, it's like, at least for me, this was my experience. It's like an overwhelming just love just comes over you because that's your child and that's a precious life. Yeah. And so that for me was just an overwhelming feeling of love at that very moment. Yeah. Like I said, that's just from my perspective as a dad.
But you can see how vital the dads are in that process. Then.
Yes.
I think it's something like 85% of girls, the first person that they want to tell is the father of the baby. Mm-hmm. As you can imagine, some of our clients aren't in actually committed relationships. They could just be completely casual. And that statistic still stays the same. It's about 85%. The reason that they do is because they want the support of the most important person involved in that pregnancy. Yeah. And so being able to minister to the dads and show them how wonderful that is and powerful, and hey, you can still be part of the process, and hey, we're here to encourage you. What are you scared about? What do you want to learn? What are you, falsely believing? All that stuff is so powerful because dads are so vital, because that is a miraculous connection that you've had no literal consistent relationship with this life that's been growing, but that moment it comes out, there is just this miraculous immediate connection.
And I know for a dad, the great thing that you guys are doing with the men is that you guys are providing that guidance. Yeah. When it's your first baby, especially, oh man, you go on the internet, you find, like, you can Google about having a baby, and it's like, there's so much information that it's information overload. Yeah. And so
scares some guys.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you Google how to change a diaper, and there's 1,000 different ways, and you have people that do this, or breastfeeding versus formula, and all this kind of stuff, and it's just overwhelming. Yeah. Then the financial side to it, and it's it can be overwhelming. And so I'm glad that you guys are providing that service for the men as well, because it's important if the guy can stay in the relationship. That's so important. There's nothing wrong with being a single parent, but it also is vital to have both a mom and a dad in the home.
Statistically, financially, fiscally, like everything changes when there's the support of the father of the baby. And again, I think that's one of the beautiful things, because again, I'm learning all this on the fly as I started here. I know nothing about if you would ask me, I would have said I was pro-life, but I knew nothing about the pro-life movement.
Yeah.
And so a beautiful thing that I found out early on was that we don't encourage just, hey, you made this mistake, just get married, and just be successful. That could be a recipe for disaster for a lot of our clients. Do some of our clients go on to get married? Absolutely. But the focus is on the healthy relationship of co-parenting. Whether you're married, you're still co-parenting. There's just a different, legal definition.
Exactly.
But we still want to encourage them just to co-parent, whatever that looks like for you. We want you to be two healthy people for this child.
That's awesome. And
that father side of the ministry, I'm a mom of two boys, so it's super, I often say, so I'm a girl, but my heart kind of goes to the guys more.
Yeah.
It's so powerful, so important to me. Statistically, you look across our country, you don't have to go far in research to see the effects of fatherlessness. It has devastated our nation. And so the pregnancy center movement is doing its little part. We want to partner with the church so we can encourage them to do their part. I just think of a world of what it would look like if we really honed in on that, because life literally changed. Life was not perfect before Roe versus Wade. I don't think any of us will fool ourselves and say that. But you can literally look at the scales of what happened in culture when we started asking the man to kind of step out of the scene. That's a God-defined role. God designed the man to be the head for a reason. They're equal partners, helpmate, and all that. But there's a specific reason, and it was very methodical.
Yeah, it was a watershed moment in our country.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was definitely. So how can people get involved with CareNet?
Yeah.
To help out and to do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So such a good question, because like I said, there was 3 of us. I think about 3 of us having to do all we do now ministry wise. That sounds exhausting. We would not be able to operate. So now that we're a team of 14, we still can't do it without our volunteers. We still can't do it without our community partners. They're such a vital part of what we do. We just wouldn't be able to do it. And so there's so many different ways to be able to help. Volunteering, probably calling the pregnancy center near you is the best way, and to say, hey, what are your practical needs? How could we be a part of what you're doing? Most centers will have receptionist opportunities, counselor opportunities. I don't know if all centers have mommy mentors. Ours does. We have mommy mentor opportunities. That's for a seasoned person to walk beside one of our clients for multiple weeks to grow them and to kind of root them in this new adventure. And maybe they have other kids, but in a healthy new adventure possibly. We have boutique help that we want not just to be stuff back there we're giving our clients. We literally want our clients to feel like they're walking into a place that was designed for them. So we have volunteers in our boutique that make it just nice back there and clean, and make sure we have the best baby clothes that have been donated. You can donate. You can donate old, maybe you're a garage sale, fanatic, and you find amazing, gently used stuff. Most pregnancy centers would appreciate that so much. Cribs, strollers, anything that you would think, like I said before, that you would need for a pregnancy, could help a crisis pregnancy center.
Don't forget car seats.
Car seats, so expensive.
Yes.
And babies grow so fast. Things have changed a lot in 25 years between what they have for children now. I'm so confused sometimes. I'm like, what is that? And male and female volunteers. I think sometimes people falsely assume that it's just like a woman's place to volunteer. Oh my gosh, no. We need our male volunteers. We need multicultural volunteers. This is the craziest thing. When I first started here, we had 2 Haitian counselors. We saw a ton of Creole clients. So a diverse landscape of volunteers is usually essential to a crisis pregnancy ministry. Partnering with your church, making your church aware of who the pregnancy center is in your community is a great way that you can help us with our mission. Because our mission is to partner with a local church. And then diaper drives, formula drives. That stuff is always a necessity when you have a baby. So we have people sometimes that they have everything they need. They'll throw a baby shower for their friends to come and celebrate the baby, but they also bring like a pack of diapers or a bottle of or a can of formula to donate to their local pregnancy center. My goodness, I could go on and on. I can't even think of all the ways, but just so many things. I would just encourage you just to call us, call your local pregnancy center, ask them. I think that's the best way you could honor them, is because we could probably think of things they might need, but each one is unique. And so another one might have a different need than our Treasure Coast one does. And so I just encourage you to make that call and form a relationship with them. I think that's the best way we can serve, is to find out what the need is, because service isn't really service if you're just serving.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to find out what the need is.
Yeah, you got to find out what the need is.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Willow, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I learned so much in just the time frame. In just this time frame. And so I hope that you guys have found this challenging. I hope that you guys will go ahead and contact your local pregnancy center and get involved, because this isn't just about this CareNet and this pregnancy center. This is about getting the word out of how to be, especially in this COVID crisis that we're in the middle of. How can you still get involved? I know some people are still afraid to get out, but how can you get involved?
Yeah.
And so this is just ways, I'm just trying to, that's why I'm doing interviews and stuff, just trying to get people involved in different things, because you know what? Needs still exist.
Absolutely.
Just because COVID hit doesn't mean that the world stops.
I did not.
So there's still crisis pregnancies. There's still all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, I did one episode on foster care, and there's still foster care going on.
And that actually was a challenge in COVID.
In COVID,
yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And so, there's still all these great needs going on, and COVID has actually brought that even more to the limelight. And so thank you so much.
Thank you for coming and making sure that others know.
Definitely. Thank you.
Appreciate it.